Debt Chronicles, the looming shadow of national debt on your future wealth for decades. National debt has been discussed as a distant problem, something technical, abstract, and far removed from everyday life. Trillions of dollars, billions in interest, numbers so large they feel meaningless. But national debt is not just an economic statistic. It is a force that quietly shapes your income, your savings, your cost of living, and your future opportunities in the United States, the United Kingdom, and Canada. This force is growing, and its consequences are becoming harder to ignore. National debt simply means governments are spending more than they collect in revenue and borrowing to cover the difference. In moderation, this can support growth, stabilize economies during crises, and fund long-term development. But when borrowing becomes permanent, when deficits become routine, debt stops being a tool and starts becoming a burden. Today, all three countries face historically high debt levels. Outside of major wars, in the United States, debt has reached levels once considered unthinkable during peacetime. In the United Kingdom, borrowing continues to rise amid slow productivity growth and rising public costs. In Canada, debt expanded rapidly during the pandemic and is yet to return to pre-crisis trends. Different systems, different political debates, but the same structural issue: long-term spending commitments funded by borrowed money. The true cost of this debt is not the headline number. It is interest. Every year, governments must allocate an increasing portion of their budgets simply to service existing debt. This money does not build roads, improve healthcare, or invest in innovation. It pays for yesterday. As interest rates rise, these payments grow faster, squeezing everything else. When debt service consumes more public revenue, governments are left with limited options. They can raise taxes, reduce public services, tolerate higher inflation, or borrow even more. Each choice carries consequences for individuals. Higher taxes reduce disposable income. Fewer public services mean higher private costs. Inflation erodes savings and purchasing power. And additional borrowing pushes the burden forward, shifting responsibility to future generations. This is how national debt becomes personal without ever feeling direct. You may not receive a bill labeled national debt, but you feel it in higher living costs, reduced public investment, and slower wage growth. For younger generations in the US, UK, and Canada, the challenge is especially pronounced. They are entering adulthood and economies constrained by obligations they did not create. Housing affordability has declined. Public pension systems face increasing pressure. Governments are less flexible, less willing to invest boldly, and more focused on short-term survival than long-term vision. Economic growth slows under the weight of accumulated debt, making wealth harder to build than it was for previous generations. That also changes how governments think. When interest payments dominate budgets, policy becomes reactive rather than strategic. Long-term reforms are delayed. Structural problems are postponed. Borrowing creates the illusion of stability while quietly increasing fragility. This doesn't lead to sudden collapse, it leads to stagnation. A future where growth exists, but at a lower ceiling, where opportunity narrows slowly, not dramatically. Some argue that national debt doesn't matter, that modern economies can always refinance, inflate, or print their way forward. But history shows that confidence is finite. When trust weakens, borrowing becomes more expensive. When borrowing becomes expensive, choices become painful. The danger is not immediate crisis, it is gradual decline. So what does this mean for individuals? It means the environment for building wealth is changing. In high-debt economies, relying entirely on public systems becomes riskier. Inflation protection becomes essential. Financial literacy becomes a form of self-defense. Wealth preservation matters as much as wealth creation. Understanding how national debt influences taxation, inflation, and economic growth is no longer optional. It affects retirement planning, investment decisions, and long-term security. The future will reward those who adapt early, who think long-term, and who recognize that Macroeconomic forces shape personal outcomes. This is not a message of fear. It is a call for awareness. National debt is not just a political issue or a government problem. It is a structural force influencing the lives of millions across the United States, the United Kingdom, and Canada. The shadow is already here, and how we respond individually and collectively will define the financial reality of the decades ahead.